Okay. Oh. Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh. Okay, and it goes right into something else, so that's cool. Or no? Yes. Okay. Just doing a little bit more. Smoking. Smoking. Wow. Let's see. Let me turn this off before we go into somebody else.
Oh.
Okay, this is my guest, Beth Marlis. Hello,
Hey.
Beth.
I'm laughing. That was a surprise that you played that track. That was from almost when I was a child. That
The
last
blues, the
one.
blues
So
track.
long. Yeah, yeah. Route 66 as a child. But thank you for
As a
that was a
child.
surprise. Yeah.
Actually, I mean, it just came up right after.
It was cool. It was kismet. Amazing. Did not expect that one. But
That
anyway,
first one really reminded me actually of Joe. It really did. It had those harmonies and stuff. It was pretty.
ah,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, I was on a rhythm changes kick like for, I don't know, a year or something like during the pandemic, and I just kept working on them and like closing my eyes and just, trying to connect. So yeah, well, I'm honored that you would think of Joe, but even more, I'm honored that you thought of me and invited me, and that I get to do this. Is great. Thank you.
What part of LA do you live in?
I'm in Glendale.
Okay.
Which is probably a lot of freeway traffic between me and you, but we're very close otherwise.
Yeah, and actually, it's not that bad. But I was just telling Beth before, it's amazing that we have not really run into each other. Do you remember any time that we did?
Yeah, I mean, I have early onset Jazzheimer's kind of, but I still remember a lot. And I remember, here's what I remember. In the mid-90s, you and I were both on the faculty at MI. You were in the vocal department. I was at GIT teaching. And I remember running into a little bit. Maybe I went to some gig of yours, and then I think the next stage is poetically waxing on about how great I thought you were. I think I was like showering you with compliments and love, and I still feel the same. And that was a long time ago. And then this one, I don't know if you remember, but maybe at least 20 years ago, I played a gig with you at Sportsman's Lodge. A little duo, maybe with a trumpet. Does that sound familiar? Or a trio, obviously, then.
Wow, so I must have been, was it outside?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
because there was a period, I had my jam there for 7 years, which was the best jam that I ever had. But there was this moment of time where we were trying to do it outside. So, and a trumpet player, guitar, trumpet, and vocal. Now, that's pretty standard for me.
Yeah, I'm thinking it was Ann King. I'm thinking Ann King playing trumpet, and we had a great time. And that literally might be the last time I saw you, which is absolutely unbelievable. So the fact that I get to be guest number 423 is a miracle. That you found me, and and I've checked out the stuff you've been doing, and I just really, I love that you're shining this bright light on all these members of our jazz family, and not just in LA too. I mean, I know you did somebody in Savannah who's great yesterday, and it's a big deal, and these histories and the narratives and kind of the intersections of all of us, and it's really impactful and insightful and sometimes hilarious. Hopefully. But anyway, it's great, that you found me. I don't know. I kind of do keep a low profile a bit in a way. So we can talk about what
it looks like you tour more than anything. I mean, from your bio.
Man, I'd like to. I have. But I've been hanging out for a long time at MI. I describe myself as an overgrown GIT student, literally, like went to seed, because I showed up there in the mid 80s and I never left, and I'm in my 35th year of being there and teaching. And so I think, for better or worse, I'm really strongly identified with the school. I mean, they can't get rid of me, and I became a vice president a long time ago, and was the head of GIT for 10 years. I mean, it goes back to, I never even thought they'd accept me in the 80s. I didn't think I was good enough to even go to school there. And so it was hugely an honor, and still is, to teach there, and then eventually become the head of the program, be the department chair for about 10 years. And then they just kept on saying, yeah, do this. And I just say yes. I'm like, of course, I'd love a challenge. I'd be happy to. And ultimately, through all of these changes and chapters, I just feel like my boss is the students. I mean, that's why I've stuck it out, and I love it. And I've been really lucky to teach thousands and thousands of students. And that to me, as much as I thought when I graduated I'd be touring and I'd be a session musician, I'd be this and I'd be that, really a lot of my life's work in a nutshell is to just do good work every day, and to hopefully on really good days inspire other people, to encourage them, to give them and support opportunities for other people. And so But yeah, I'm a musician. When I introduce myself to people, I just say I'm a guitar player. And then when I say other things I've done, they're like, but wait, you're not a this, or you're not a that, or you're, I mean, guitar is the what the sort of leaf that's floated me down the river that I've traveled on. You know, it's taken me everywhere, and to some very surprising places because of my saying yes to things. Like probably the most unusual destination that I floated along that leaf down the river was to become the head of the Chamber of Commerce of Hollywood. And that's something that I used to tease them. I said, are you sure you guys want a guitar player in charge of the Chamber of Commerce, you know, to be chairman of the board? You know, like there's like 36 board members and they're, you know, vice presidents of Paramount and Capitol. And it was just like, are you sure you want a jazz guitar player, you know, to lead this thing? And you know what? I will say that jazz guitar players, particularly, and jazz musicians, I think we're eminently qualified for, you know, many, many things in the world.
I have to find out how. I mean, I always thought when I would look at jobs that needed a manager, and people would look at what I did and they'd say, oh no, you don't qualify. It's like, really? I have managed my life and, you know, not become homeless. I have, you know, credit. I am an artist, a jazz artist, and I've done that for years, and you don't think I'm qualified to run an office? It's like,
I think that the qualification is not having an imagination. It's like, you know, that'll get you the job. I think the things, you know, you were talking about the jam at the Sportsman's Lodge and this and so much that you have done or I've done, that the skills as an improviser, as a musician, you know, and it's well documented, lots of scientific studies about how music and intelligence, you know, how they really support each other. And so I've loved over the years, if I go back to the alumni of MI, there's like 50,000 people have graduated over, you know, these years. A lot of them are CEOs, or there's even a state senator. They've been successful in a lot of other avenues in the world because the training of being a musician it's so essential, and it really harkens back to Joe Diorio, where we started our long run on Sentence, or mine anyway, and that is that, you know, Joe always said it's just one big song. You know, it's just one song. It's like you know, delineations of these things into little boxes is what gets you in trouble. So I'm impressed, and you know, I'll circle back to what I was saying before. I think you're a really special, talented artist and musician, but you're giving a gift to the world because you're documenting something that's irreplaceable with all these stories that you're providing, you know, and facilitating this thing. And I'm really appreciative to you. I just want to say, in case I forget later when we start talking about other stuff, but it's a big deal. It's a wonderful thing you've cultivated here. So thank you for doing what you've done. And anyway, that's sort of, you know, where I come from. You know, my idea is to keep giving back. So I'm involved in a lot of nonprofits. I serve on a lot of boards. I run a foundation that gives out scholarship money. I've raised, well, there'll be actually a new donation soon, but it will be well over, when it comes through, altogether over $1 million in money for scholarships for music students. I'm excited, you know, to just keep on doing that work every day. And, you know, we do classes through our foundation at the Grammy Museum for LAUSD high school kids, you know, teaching music there. And I've run that series for 13 years or whatever. And so multitasking like you, just doing a lot of different things. And I'd love to tour. I think that would be wonderful, coming back to you.
Go on to tour.
Yeah.
I think you remember we were both saying sleep this week was kind of suffering. Yeah. So last night I got up and I was reading my book. It's all about failure, which is an interview with Steven Levine, who Steven, I forget, I think it's Steven, but he was the president of Cal Arts for 3 decades. it's a really, really good book. As I'm reading, I'm thinking, I have to read this book again. Well, as I'm reading. And he's talking, last night, the parts that I was reading about was raising money and his point of view. It was really beautiful and fascinating. He said he never asked money from somebody who he didn't respect.
That's very interesting. That makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
he said if the line for him crossed over into a like a deeper friendship, he found it difficult to ask for money. So it was like he, he really recognized that the person was a human being, and no matter how rough around the edges they appeared, there was this human essence behind it. And if he respected them, he he would approach that human essence. And he was really good friends with Herb Alpert.
That helps too.
Yeah, I mean, through this process, actually, he became friends with him, and I guess Herb Alpert gave a lot of money to CalArts, and some people wanted to take their money out when he left.
Wow.
They
Interesting.
really
It's, yeah.
loved him. Anyway, it's a great book. You probably would really like it. It's called something about failure, like the failure is necessary, or something like that.
That's
So
great. Great.
yeah,
That sounds really good. No, I mean, there's a lot of wisdom in just what you're sharing about it because we all can smell that. Somebody comes asking us for money or our time or to donate our services as musicians or whatever. I mean, if it doesn't feel good, if it doesn't pass the smell test, it's
yeah,
off the table. And so it's a very personal thing about money. And a lot of people, it's really hard to talk to them about it or hard for people to ask. And, that other little nugget in there about, I don't know what the actual title of the book is, but I'll definitely find it. The thing about failing. I've been doing some really great studies with this amazing jazz guitar player in the East Coast, Rodney Jones, this like kind of iconic guy. And he talks a lot of, you know, his playing is really deep, it's inspiring, he has a lot of inspirational approaches, but one of the things he repeatedly says is you have to be willing to fail 1,000 times before, you get it, whatever it is. And that willingness to fail is a huge component, I think, in anyone that really succeeds, whether you're as a musician or you're raising money or relationships. It's like, it's a kind of suspension of the fear of it and just embrace. And so I think as performers, we certainly know that when we encounter how much there's like, oh, it's so scary sometimes to get on a certain stage or, do some of these things we do.
yeah, we have to leave our ego behind and be in the moment. And that's a challenge for everybody, but especially, of course, artists performing. You know, that's like the
Definitely.
big challenge. For every artist, not just the ones who aren't famous. I have a funny question from my friend Roland Askerins. Roland, I'm surprised you didn't ask about her guitars yet. He is 13. So he says, Beth, I got to know, is it true that in your younger days, during the Hendrix The Who, you smashed a guitar against the wall? Was it out of admiration or out of frustration or just because? Also, what kind of guitar was it? That's really a guitar player asking.
Oh man, I'm going to answer that, but I had this realization as I was signing on to this today, Kathy, that it's like, I've been lucky to be interviewed a lot of times, but the thing is, it's always other guitar nerds that want to interview me, so it's like I love them. But I thought, oh, a vocalist, cool, okay, but they find me. So it's Roland, right? Yeah, I am. Yeah, it's true. It's all true. I did smash it, and the Jimi Hendrix experience. I was trying to be experienced. I was, the story is real quick that I really wanted to play guitar so much. I started playing violin first, and it just wasn't cool enough. And it was the Beatles. Beatles were happening, and Jimi Hendrix, and it's like I begged my mom, get me a guitar, please, 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 get me a guitar. She did. It was, and I'll answer your second part of this question first. It was just a piece of junk. So I don't know what that thing was. All right, so we can kind of like, phew, not worry that it was a D'Angelico or something. But yeah, I was taking these lessons. She was nice, and she's like, "Okay, honey, I'll get you guitar lessons." Here's this nice older woman who will teach you folk guitar. And so we started learning America the Beautiful and Maybe This Land Is Your Land, and I was required to sing them when I played. And I felt so mad, like I'd been double crossed. Like, I want to learn to play like Jimi Hendrix or whoever, the Beatles, and I have to learn this crap. So I just got really mad, and I just ran outside one day and some afternoon and just like took the guitar and smashed it against the house. I was like, forget it. I'm not doing it. And I don't know where I get that like moxie, but I think I still have it. Like, I don't have a lot of, I don't suffer fools, very easily. And so by some miracle intervention of whatever, I got another guitar later. I got another one.
Your mom?
I think that
Your
came.
mom must have been.
My mom was like a pushover, obviously.
Yeah, she must have been like, okay,
Yeah.
Beth just smashed her guitar against the wall and broke it.
I don't know, what did she think of? I never found out. I should have asked her. But I also inherited a Hagstrom, like with like Vegematic buttons and like a million little things you can push. That came from some cousin or whatever. I was like, oh, now I'm happy. I got like this really crummy amp and this crazy guitar, and I could just play it really loud and be a hippie. And so then I was set. Then I was like, I'm happy. But yeah, the first one, it was not a good beginning. Let that be a lesson to all of you out there, that if it's hard when you're learning the guitar in the beginning, that fail 1,000 times thing, don't let that stop you, don't let it. But yeah, absolutely true. And guitars, 13, I'm not going to tell you how many more than 13 I have, but yeah, I've got lots. And like you, I only can play one at a time, but I do kind of switch around. There's like 3 of them.
What are the 3 in your room?
There's actually one you can't see that's even hidden because it's camera shy. A couple of Benedetto guitars. I have an educator endorsement, or however we call these things. With them, I've been playing Benedetto guitars for quite some time. They're gorgeous, wonderful, fabulous guitars, come out of Savannah, and really a privilege to. As maybe our mutual friend Sid Jacobs once said to me, says, if you have a Benedetto in the house, good fortune will always smile upon you. And I have a couple, and I feel super fortunate because they are really just great guitars. Over on this side is a Sir chambered Telly, and on that side is this is embarrassing. I call it Boris.
Boris.
Yeah. I asked Roger, how should I say your name? He goes, oh, whichever way you want. So, Boris. He, those guitars were played by, the first time I ever saw one was Emily Remler, who, of course, I, was crazy for. I invited her to GIT when I was still a teacher before she passed away. I was so glad I brought her in as a guest. I wrote her sort of a fan letter because I didn't know her. And just said, I'm teaching at GIT. Would you come here to do a clinic? And she did. And of course, it's amazing. It's captured on video. It floats around the internet. And I walked her around the school. Like, I took her on a tour, before the clinic and the concert. And we do this thing. It's the school, you may remember, Cathy, open counseling, where it's like office hours. You sit in a room. And Scott Henderson was doing his. And so I'm walking Emily down the hallway, and I go, like, let's check out what Scott's doing, because his door's open. And she stuck her head in, and Scott's like, oh man, it's Emily Remler. And so she had her guitar. They sat down and played. And it was one of the more brilliant moments in my 35 years that I've been there. It was just incredible. And so I wish I'd known her more, I'd seen her more. But anyway, she's the first one that had that instrument. And then, of course, Jimmy Weibel had one, and his own model. And then I don't know that I can say who my favorite guitar player in the world is, but one of my favorites, and I have several, is Larry Koontz. I don't know if you're listening or if you'll ever hear this, and maybe it's better you don't, because I don't want to get like too over the top, but I love his playing. He has one of these guitars. Pat Kelly too. These are guys I've studied with. I studied with Larry and Pat. They both have them, and they just there was some wonderfully warm characteristic in all of their playing. And this sort of Jimmy Weibel inspired school, this thing that it's like when I found one online about 6 months ago, it's like I just had to have it and know it and feel it. And so, it's special to me, like the Benedettos are too. So anyway, lucky, don't want to become like guitar nerd podcast, right now. So, but you asked.
Oh, I know. I have a soft spot for guitar. And I always have. I love piano too, but guitar, there's something about singing with a guitar for me that like connects in a different way than piano. And so, and I've, how some of my friends, I'm thinking some of my women friends, like my singer friends, will end up with a bass player, like bass player, all their relationships, pianist, whatever. And so I ended up with guitar several times, a guitarist. But and I just remember one of my boyfriends, we used to just kind of sit around and look at his guitar, especially the back of it, and he would just look at it and the way he would touch it
and pet it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, I would enter into that world. And another thing I noticed about guitar players is even though they can be playing scales while they're talking, they're actually in guitar land while they're talking to you. So it's really they're there and then they're talking, not they're here and they're playing scales. They're actually in guitar land.
You never get free. Once you're in, you're like, you can always think that, you're eating dinner or something else, but actually you're actually practicing. It reminds me of a story that and this will connect to a second story, but about Ted Green, because Ted, as you know, didn't do a lot of live gigs, but he was, I remember at one point playing a solo gig at a little, restaurant in San Fernando Valley on Ventura, and I went with Daniel Gilbert, another GIT teacher, and he and I went to go hear Ted. It's like, Ted Green's playing, we have to go. And so we got in the restaurant, they seated us in the back of the restaurant where Ted was playing. It was like near the dessert cart, like really so not worthy. And he's like stuffed back in this restaurant in the corner, and people are yakking, they're talking, they're clanging, they're whatever their dishes. Nobody's listening except Dan and I, and we're just like, oh my God, it's Ted Green and this is stupendous. He's playing fully improvised counterpoint like Bach, Ted. And so we're blown away. Then all of a sudden, some guy walks in to the room and starts talking to Ted. And Ted's like doing this counterpoint, and then just going, yeah, well, Bill, I'll leave you the key under the mat, and I'll see you around like 4:00, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like really great to see you. And he's like having this conversation and playing this flawless, unbelievable counterpoint and having a conversation. I just about fell on the floor. I mean, it was like unbelievable. So there is something to that point of, you may be practicing your skills. If you're lucky, you won't be looking at Facebook and practicing your skills at home. But, some other things will be going on. There's all these dimensions, and man, he had them. And why I bring up Ted again, Cathy, is because I know you've known Ted. You knew Ted a long time. And somebody very recently, about 2 days ago, sent me this link. And I don't know if you're aware of this. Maybe you know it. But it's a recording of you and Ted from 1978 at GIT. Do you know this?
I do. Actually, I actually made a CD and a DVD up called Never Forgotten of me and Ted. And that, I included that. That was our first gig. I remember that gig really well. It was the old GIT, which was that one building that turned into Chickeria's something. Down like
on the other side, like East Hollywood.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was always amazing. He was always, and I'll tell you a funny story. So I had been singing forever, right? But when you enter your professional life, it's just a different kind of a thing. So when I came here it wasn't too much longer after I came here that I started rehearsing and playing with Ted. And after, I guess it must have been after the TED gig or coming away from it, I started working at the Money Tree with Karen Hernandez. And in those days, they had like, you had kind of a residency for 2 weeks, you know. And, you know, like they would say, well, what key do you do this in? And I'd say, whatever, you know, B flat or whatever. Not fully being conscious that Ted and I wouldn't stay in the same key. We would, you know, start in a key and then transpose maybe at the bridge. So my keys were fucked up. I soon learned that, you know, but it was such a, you know, naive shocker, you know.
What did I do? I mean, my man. I mean, as a duo partner or someone to be Ted Green, that's like phenomenal, really. I mean, that's just royalty, and you know, you by default are royalty too. So that it's amazing. But I had never heard this, and so somebody sent me this link the other day, and it was really emotional actually to hear it. It was transportive. It was like almost 45 years ago. I mean, not to date anybody here, but but it just felt of that time. Like, you know, so much has happened since 1978. It's just head spinning, but it really was a treasure, you know, just to hear it. So for whatever it's worth, I had a feeling you knew about it, and clearly, you know, you being you, you know, you did something about it.
I should send you a Never Forgotten. You know, they don't sell like wild cakes, of course, but they do sell occasionally. But I'll send you one.
Thanks.
We'll exchange addresses and stuff. And yeah, I will definitely send you one. And the DVD is really cool because it's at Rocco's, you know.
Oh yeah, up on Beverly Glen.
Yes, which was the predecessor of Vibrato, and that was a great night. That was just so much fun preparing for that, and that was about 20 years ago. And yeah, that was so that I mean, it's just done on like somebody's video camera, you know, from the back side or something, you know. But still, it's so cool, and you get to see Ted's hands, and you just see Ted, and it's really a lovely thing to, you know.
I would love to see that. I'd love to see, you know, that intimacy, and that it's rare. I mean, I would never liken myself to Ted Green in any way, shape, or form ever. With the only thing that I have in common with him is the fact that there aren't like a lot of videos of me playing, you know, because he was sort of famously, you know, like he didn't really want to be captured or whatever. But
humble. He was overly humble.
When I had to ask him like 10 times to come to GIT to do an open counseling. Over and over, I'd have to, would you please come? And you know, that fail 1,000 times and then you finally succeed. Finally, he said yes. And he came. It really took years. He came, and I remember he drove up in, I don't know, a funky old car in Hollywood. And, you know, it wasn't exactly the safest place in the world to park a car, but he parked right by the school. And he got out, took his guitar out, and he didn't lock the doors, or the windows were open. I said, Ted, it's Hollywood. Maybe you want to close up your car. He goes, no. He says, my amp's in there, but it's fine. And I looked in the window, and it was just full of like old crumpled up newspapers and junk. I was like, no one's going to touch it. It's fine. I mean, he was right, but it just sort of like, okay. So it made me realize it's like, I think I know everything, or what, you know, I think I know what works, but you know, maybe I don't really. And so, but anyway, he didn't get his car or his amp stolen, and he did, some beautiful teaching that day. And I think somebody, again, like on some funky device or whatever, recorded it. But there's like so many things I wish had been captured, that just slipped through the cracks. And nowadays, so many of us record almost everything. So it's almost the opposite problem.
I know. And he like 20 years ago, he called he called the book, what was the book's title, his original book?
Chord chemistry.
Yeah, he called it Frankenstein chemistry. He kind of looked down on it a little bit. I think he thought I went way over the deep end. I think that's what he thought.
I felt like it was just one too many of everything. You know what I mean? Like it was brilliant, but so brilliant that I couldn't use it. It was again sort of that frightening thing that it was just too much. And in fact, confession is that I took a lesson from Ted when I don't know around the time I think I was getting my master's at USC. I went down there and got studio jazz guitar degree, and I thought, well, I should study with Ted too. This was again more than 20 years ago. And I took one lesson from him and I never went back.
Oh,
I never went back. And he gave me so much information that it was like 6 months worth of stuff. And I thought, I'm never going to be a good enough student, even though I'm in a master's program and blah, blah, blah. And I teach at GIT and whatever,
yeah.
phony accolade or whatever, it means. I just thought I'm not going to do him justice. It's just not going to work. And so I ran into him several months later, maybe 6 months later at USC, and it's like, he like chastised me. He's like, why didn't you come back? You gave up. And it stuck with me. It's like, I should have, but it was that chord chemistry, that sort of effect of like, it's just, I don't have enough lifetimes to even get a tenth of it. So
Well, I think, and this is an interesting discussion, although I do have questions for you, but, zooming, on Facebook. But I think it's interesting when a person, I've seen this over and over again in different ways, when a person is brilliant, like you were saying, he was doing all his whole thing in guitar land, basically, and then talking to some guy while he was doing it. I think people like that learn, and actually, this if that's his first name, Steven Levine, the president of Cal Arts for 3 decades, he was like this too. Somebody who really is really good at what they do, and thought of extremely highly, and they have to figure out a way to communicate, that's havable for people, So, and I'm sure every now and then they find somebody communicating to them on the level that they can operate on, the high level that they can operate on. But most of the time, it's probably like kind of not a dumbing down, but a simplifying,
that's a really important thing, what you're talking about, because there probably are a lot more people who walk the earth that are extraordinary, brilliant geniuses. I mean, I'm not going to say idiot savant or any, categorization and nothing like that, but who can't find the language. It's like growing another language to be able to bridge it to mortals like the rest of us. It's an interesting study if you were, sort of into that particular science of it. And I think that it's very rare. I think that's very true. And then the flip side, the effort that it takes from someone like us to be able to, let's use it in the jazz framework, to really understand Coltrane or Charlie Parker or Thelonious Monk or I don't know, whoever you want to use. It takes effort, right? You have to be willing to build the bridge from your land mass to that. That's a lot easier, I think, for those of us. But you're absolutely right. And I think Ted was an iconoclast. He was who he was, and God bless him, He didn't change a lick. He was who he was through and through, and not, maybe no brain cells or whatever, molecules. That would have been a waste for him to try to sort of not build a bridge or dumb it down, but you know what I mean? It's an interesting thing. And then you have people that are sort of antisocial narcissists on the other end of the spectrum. It's like you're brilliant at something, but you're really a creepy person. There's lots of those situations too. Thankfully, and there are certainly musicians like that too. It's like, man, that guy plays good or she plays great, but man, I do not want to work with them. And it clears the decks really fast, thankfully, in our world. Yeah, but it's a very interesting point. What you're bringing.
It's interesting. There's some other point that I wanted to bring up about that, but I forget it right now. But it's a good the next question from Mark Baldrich. He says, with your Musicians Institute, has your organization looked into offering music therapy to use music to help people's health?
No, not in a highly organized way. I think there have probably been outcroppings that come through maybe an individual faculty member that might have some specialization. But, I know from my days, for example, just using frame of reference of USC since I went to college, graduate school there, they have programs that are dedicated towards that kind of thing, music therapy. And it's such an art form in and of itself that I don't see MI, creating that sort of major or emphasis, that focus. But, in the broader scope of the effects of music, as a faculty member or whatever, someone that, is teaching or doing it for a living, we all have this, cognizance of the power of music, but not in an organized degree, not yet anyway.
I'm
Good question.
impressed that I couldn't believe when I found out that effortless mastery has had a department at Berkeley for 5 years.
I
That
didn't know that.
You didn't either. That is crazy. And Kenny Werner, of course, is the head of it. But imagine a whole department and you can get a degree in effortless mastery.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
really, really great. And, I respect, and, MI people can just go la 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 or whatever. I respect a lot of the stuff that's happened at Berkeley and won't, lie to you in that, they headhunted me a number of times. I considered going there and making that move. And for whatever reason, it worked out that I stayed here. Several reasons. But I had a chance to really look under the hood a bit there. And there's so, much in the legacy and the evolution of that place that is really wonderful to see. and what comes to mind that's relevant maybe specifically to me is the gender justice initiatives that they've taken on, because they kind of had some speed bumps with some sexual harassment stuff. I mean, it wasn't a very pretty time several years ago, and they pivoted and they created this, and I'm not identifying it correctly, Institute for Gender Justice or something like that, but within higher education, that there's a great deal of sexism in jazz education, jazz music, towards women, and they just took it head on, which I really admire. In fact, not to go too far afield, but I've been asked a lot of times to talk about women in music and guitar and jazz, and 1,000 times, and
Yeah.
led panels on it and written articles. And I think it was about a year ago, I wrote a series. I wrote an article and then I did a series of interviews, 5 interviews of women in higher education in jazz, and specifically jazz guitar, that have become department heads, that are department chairs of leading institutions of jazz guitar. And 2 of them are at Berkeley. Kim Perlak is the guitar chair, and Cheryl Bailey, both great musicians, great people. They're leading that department. And then there's also, just to sort of round it out, Sharon Isbin, of course, at the Juilliard School, Molly Miller at LA College of Music, and Jocelyn Gould up in Canada at Humber College. And even me, I'm an OG. Back in the year 2000, I was a woman head of GIT, which seemed like a radical thing. But all of this I bring up to you because it happened quietly. It's like this huge change, a sea change. It's like women were running these jazz guitar departments of higher education was incredible. And I think a piece of that puzzle, or the cog in that wheel, is that Berkeley sort of identified some of the problem. And I think that those 2 women are not there because they're women. They're superb at leading the organization. They were chosen because they were the right people. But that there's this change, and it's really, really an exciting thing. So back to effortless mastery, I think it's just they have this breadth. They have a lot of endowment money. They have a long history, and Mazel Tov, good for them that they have that. And MI has its own unique history in coming out of the Wrecking Crew and the studios and the authenticity of that, and that we're in Hollywood, and it's like viva la différence. It's great they're both there, they're both really different, and so MI doesn't quite have that sort of bandwidth, I think, to delve into it, even though, boy, the world could use more music therapy, don't you think?
Yeah, it would
That's a long answer.
Well, but that's good. Okay, now, I have a guitarist here who is very bright with questions. He's at North Texas. His name is Taylor Hatch. So one question he has is, over time in your guitaristic development, what was one thing you worked on in practice that took you a while until you finally got it?
Oh, everything. Wow. You know, yeah, I can only speak for myself. Like, I don't know how to say it, Taylor, but I have this experience of, you'll laugh at me, I guess, because I've been playing a really long time, but I swear to you, almost every other day I go like, oh, duh, why didn't I know that? I mean, I'm like constantly, why didn't I do it the hard way? Whatever that is. Why did I play these arpeggios like this? Or why did I connect it like that? Or why did I finger it like that? Or so I take it as a good sign because I'm just not letting it rest at all. And for a long time, I only used to practice. I'm doing a lot of confessing on this thing today. I didn't practice very much for about 20 years. When I was teaching at GIT and doing gigs, I'd only practice for the gigs. But now, you know what I mean? So I just kind of stayed the same for a really long time. And since the pandemic, I said, oh, I got to fix that. So I've been practicing a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. And so I've loved it. I mean, I'm probably one of those weird people that's like, oh, cool, a pandemic, yay. I get to stay in and shed. And so, what I'm discovering in this process now, is it's hard to say what's hardest. I think what was shocking to me was when I decided to take on learning Jimmy Weibel things, his etudes, because it blew me away how difficult. And I was terrified when I met Jimmy and knew him and hired him to come to teach at GIT and was around him. And it was like, I tried that stuff and I couldn't do it. I thought my hands can't physically work that way. And it's like the tendons don't even go that way. It was a strange thing. And I just put it on the shelf for like 15 years and then I picked it up. And so that was one of the hardest things I ever tried to conquer. And this kind of remains as sort of the zenith of tough things for me to do. It's like I kind of feel a little pulled to get back and learn more of his etudes. And because it's mind and technique, huge expansion to me. So that was the biggest and most challenging thing I've learned, I could say, the last couple of years. If that answers the question. If it doesn't, send me a note. Sorry.
Well, actually, that makes me want to play. Let's play. I'm just looking for where I have it. I want to. I want to get your.
You're looking for a track, and I'll tell you, I mean, if people don't know about Jimmy, I'll just say it in case I don't get the chance. What a beautiful human being. What an amazing player, innovator, deepest soul, kindest gentleman of the guitar that ever walked the earth. I mean, my goodness, you know that. And so, of course, I wanted to connect to his music and what he had to teach, and it was so worth it. I mean, it was so hard, and now it's a lot easier. But in the beginning, just killed me. But boy, do I love it and respect him and his music.
Is 8 okay? Or
Yeah, you can play 828. It's a little, sorry folks for the video, it's a little dark, but it's still 828.
It's dark as in visually or dark?
Visually. Oh, visually, yeah. There it is.
That's beautiful. Sorry, oh, cute.
Alone together.
Oh, this cartoony thing is great. I love it. Oh, love it.
Cool. Thanks.
Sounds really great. Hey, I have a question for you. So, my girlfriend from Australia called me last night as right before went to sleep. Maybe that's why I couldn't sleep. I don't know. Anyway, he was about to be a speaker in, like a seminar about jazz, and Australia's Australia, and America is, where jazz originated, right? For as far as Australians are concerned, and they have kind of a respect and an awe about that. So anyway, but the conversation was going to be about, is jazz dead or does it have a new address? I love that. I thought that was great. Personally, of course, I said it has a new address, but and then we got into talking about like bebop and modern and what jazz, how to define jazz, and is it necessary to define jazz? Well, I mean, for people who are trying to define it, it's necessary, but or even at certain moments, I guess. But of course, being an educator, we have more opportunities to define it. What do you think about all of that?
Wow. Well, that's a great question, and I agree with you. It's just, it's on the move. It's not dead.
Yeah.
Rumors of its demise have been premature forever. And I think, I guess it reflects in who's sort of doing the speaking and the playing, or who's creating it. Because for better or worse, because of the internet, I see a lot of young voices, musicians who are astonishing, who are somehow, they're channeling it and they get the benefit of the internet or whatever, and they're getting information and shaping it in different ways. And I'm blanking on the name of, darn it, it's really embarrassing now. There's this great duo, this young woman piano player and this drummer. Gosh darn it, can't think of their name. They're really super hip, and they're really jazz infused, but like hip hop, but in this really authentic way. And I love them, and I feel like I gotta like pick up my phone and go on Instagram and find them because I'm blanking on their names. But I just see there's these outcroppings of fantastic, still new directions, new interpretations, new addresses and forwarding addresses for it, and that younger people are getting it for however they're doing it, however it gets to them. So I think it's an intellectual exercise to quantify it. Like, is it dead? Is rock and roll dead? Should we write an article about it? Let's do podcasts about it. I guess I'm not terribly interested, honestly. It sort of doesn't interest me because
Actually, I'm not that interested either.
I mean, yeah.
It's kind of like saying, I mean, and I can appreciate when people want to ask you to discuss women, how difficult it might be for women. And I talked about this, was it yesterday, at the beginning of the week with Anna
Yeah. She sounded great, by the way. And it's weird I don't know her and she doesn't know me.
Yeah, she's really great.
Totally bizarre.
So it's just that I guess my interest is more focusing on the human problems and human racism and stuff instead of only women. And it's not that I don't recognize that women have had it hard. It's absolutely true, but everybody's had it hard. Everybody has some kind of screwed up family life. No matter if you had the larger portion was great or the larger portion wasn't, everybody has that stuff, So it's, again, like, I think we talked about this, but it's how you deal with it. It's not that you make mistakes, it's how do you deal with the mistakes that you make. That's really what pulls you up out of the mire, right?
I think it's how you do it and you remain a human being. You don't grow like a shell and put on armor to, get rid of that part of yourself. You have to own it. And you're right, every one of us comes from 1,000 different places and upbringings and histories, and that's what informs our music and who we are. So I find it, honestly, it's always been a mild interest, but mostly distracting when people ask me about, oh, you're a woman, female jazz guitar player. What do you think about this and that? Or what's it like? Or, I'm going to be professional and nice about it. And I'll talk to people because I don't want to not be educational. If it opens someone's eyes, I'm happy to talk to anyone about it, for sure. If they have, preconceptions that are impeding them, I'm happy to help them get rid of preconceptions. But really, and it's like, again, it's an honor, to help it evolve and their ideas, and then get it out of the way and get to this human place you're talking about, because otherwise, it's just, I don't want to think about it. I want to think about the music, or I want to think about the job at hand. I don't really want to worry about, well, what are they going to think about me because I'm a woman, or, judgment or whatever. But I've certainly had my share, and I've certainly, as I said before, I've had to lead panels and talk about it more times than I can imagine, because it doesn't go away, just like racism. It's like, and I've been I was in a protest marcher in the 70s. It's like we're still, talking about certain things that evolve, but very slowly, that arc of moral, justice. It's slow, and, we keep on saying what we have to say, but at a certain point, you have to prioritize. Otherwise, it's like the Ted Green factor or something. It's kind of like precious time that you'll never see again gets sucked into these other areas, whereas Ted, didn't want to devote that part of his brain to, other things. So I feel that way. It's sort of like it comes with my territory. Yeah, I'm a female jazz guitar player, and I wish there were more of us. I could use another 1,000 out there, and it would, as my old cliche I've said 1,000 times, speaking of 1,000, if we had 1,000 female jazz guitar players that were great, we'd have world peace instantaneously. It would just magically, like a 100th monkey, because it means the world has tilted, like something's really different. And so I apologize. There's like leaf blowers. There's
I
like some.
know, man.
It's
There's a lot going on around your house.
really sorry. It's like Wednesday afternoon. Cool. But anyway, yeah, I would like to see more. But I'd like to see more musicians. I'd like to see that, jazz's new address, more people playing it and appreciating it and loving it. And that's all for the good. So our job as educators and performers is to provide that. And so that's why I take it as my sort of solemn oath in life. It's like I'm about doing whatever I can to create opportunity and not put a capper on it for whatever it's worth. So
Yeah.
that's sort of my thing. Yeah.
So I'm curious. So nowadays, what are your jobs? It sounds like you have several jobs right now. I mean, besides, we know you're obviously an accomplished guitarist, so you must continue playing. But besides that, are you the working vice president of MI? I mean, what is your day filled with? I mean, are you
Oh,
actually?
leaf blowers.
Yeah.
And cars. Yeah, oh, that's yeah. I because I'm really, a vice president at MI, but with a good deal of political capital and flexibility. I have a lot of flexibility in what I choose to take on, what I do. And so one of my responsibilities is like Mr. Levine, is to raise money for scholarships. So I was a student myself at GIT. I remember like it was yesterday how inspiring and how much I fell in love with who was there. It was the heyday of Joe Pass and Pat Martino and Larry Carlton and like all these great players there. And I loved it and never wanted to do anything else. And so to me, providing scholarship money to allow other students to have that experience means the world to me. So I took on running the nonprofit that's related to MI, taught myself, or actually was taught, I did teach myself, how to run a nonprofit. So I'm an executive director of a nonprofit scholarship granting organization. I'm also, because of other community-based initiatives, I looked at the school. It's in the middle of Hollywood. I looked at MI and I thought, what are we not doing? This was about 15 years ago. I thought, what are we not doing as a school? Well, if you go to UCLA or if it's NYU or whatever college, you know that it's an asset to a community to have a college, and there's a great community relationship between higher education and the community it's in. So I wanted to connect MI to the community more. So I joined the board of directors of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce back in like 2011 and became involved in what seemed to be the strongest organization in Hollywood, as far as what was going on. And I wanted to represent the voice of students from their point of view. So that got me into this world as a vice president of being on the chamber board, becoming the chairman of the board, running their community foundation, and having this community engagement and civic engagement that I kind of loved it, and really connected MI much more to the community. That was something I chose and took on myself. I thought, coming out of what aren't we doing? We're not doing this. So that's a part of my ongoing job, is kind of a community and industry relations sort of
How do
piece.
you, I'd like to know um, how you divide your attention, because I think that's an important point for people such as us who take on a lot of different things. And yeah, I mean, I know how I do, but I'm curious how you do, because that's a lot of thinking, and a lot of intention. And there, even though I'm sure it's somewhere they cross, I mean, together, they kind of merge. There's probably a whole bunch that is distinctive as well.
It's true. I think when you have a lot of irons in the fire, though, at least I can say for me, there is a crossover. Like one of them supports the other
Yeah.
in a way. Um, and the thing that suffered for many years, as I alluded to before about just practicing guitar when I was teaching or when I was doing a gig, is I let my guitar playing kind of not be center.
Yeah.
And now it's actually really dead center for me, which is different. And I'm really glad for it. Because I did used to tour and I used to gig a lot. And I look forward to doing that again. But in this moment, I'm just kind of doing all these things, and none of them feel particularly like a strain. I enjoy it. I really, at the end of the day, like learning. It's like, what can I learn? This is really a weird segue, but it's a TV reference, okay? Have you ever seen this show? And people are going to think I'm really weird. None of this. It's going to sound so strange. On Netflix, it's called Old Enough. Have you ever seen this show?
I've heard of that, but no, I've never seen it.
I have an appreciation for Japan. I speak some Japanese and used to study martial arts and so forth, and work with Japan House in Hollywood. So I appreciate some stuff about Japan. But so I started watching this, and in a nutshell, it's about taking like 2 and 3-year-olds and sending them out on an errand by themselves for the first time, and rising to the occasion and getting lost, and it's terrifying. And they just like, and only in Japan would it be safe enough for them
Yeah,
to do it, you
that
know,
is so true.
like so crazy. But why I bring it up is it's like so it just gives me faith in humanity, you know, and this also the joy of learning. It's like they are like terrified, but when they do their little errand by themselves, like they go deliver some food or whatever, and they get back home, they are so proud of themselves and so happy they learned. And I relate to that. It's like, I'm so happy I learned, you know, how to, whatever, make this thing happen in the world, or raise this money, or learn this lick. And I feel the same way as those little kids. And it's a totally weird show, but I kind of like love it. It's been this great music
to
therapy
watch
for me. It's therapy. They're really weird. But yeah, that's me. So now more than you wanted to ever know about me. Yeah, it's a lot.
I have more questions.
Yeah,
And,
cool.
and also, Roland said that he caught your interview on High Action with the New West Guitar Group, and he loved it.
Thank you very much,
I
fellow
heard
guitar nerd.
I heard Joe on that, the whole Joe thing, and that was great. Oh my gosh, that
Yeah.
was just so great. Let's see, Taylor, there's some playing questions and some teaching questions that he has. Let's see. He also mentioned his current teacher, Noel Johnston, and he thinks that you'd appreciate his approach to fundamental and scale patterns, and maybe you were at USC at the same time. I don't know. That's
I don't know that name, but you know, I don't know everybody obviously. So, you know, if there's somebody it'd be cool for me to know about, send it my way for sure. Because, like I said, I love learning and seeing what other people, you know, do.
yeah.
I'm, you know, as I mentioned about Rodney Jones, I'm learning. I joined one of his sort of online study things, and I'm, you know, he's a lot more modern player than me, but I'm totally challenged, and that's where I'm happiest. It's like, I don't want to know everything because I can't. And I feel more and more like I really know less than I ever thought I did.
Well, here's a question, and Taylor, you've asked this question before of guitar players, and I always wonder why you bring up the piano. But he said, when you're working on a solo arrangement for a tune, how do you balance being contrapuntal and trying to approach a tune in a pianistic way? I'm not sure why you ask that exactly. Is it, it's not, is it your goal to approach it in a pianistic way? I'm not sure. Do you understand that question?
I'm trying to grasp what the allusion to pianistic way is. If he's asking, are you a slave to a kind of relentless contrapuntal movement versus a more interpretive, you know, how much freedom do you allow yourself? And, you know, I made this, again, the thing about being challenged, I made this conscious decision during the pandemic because I'm not a very good fingerstyle player or solo guitar player at all. Like, it's a really weak thing, which is why I went to the Jimmy Weibel stuff. And you heard on that recording, I didn't play it perfectly. I can never play that perfectly. It's very hard. But, you know, just to be able to acquire that language gives me the freedom to interpret other solo guitar pieces. Obviously, I can incorporate his ideas and the contrapuntalness. So I'm not sure, like Cathy, Taylor, exactly.
Maybe you're right. Maybe it's the more just simple melodic approach. Maybe he's talking about it that way. But Yeah, I mean, first of all, I didn't see any mistakes because I don't know the G.
Oh, I didn't make any.
So, but it was beautiful. I noticed your fingers were really independent. They were spread out. They were playing lines that kind of were unexpected, and of course the music itself was beautiful. But yeah, I mean, the guitar to me is one of the hardest instruments that exists because there's so many possibilities that you can do with the guitar that, I mean, you play a trombone, it's a hard instrument, but one note is like this or like this maybe, and that's about it, and then you have to get the fingers together and, etc. But guitar,
I know. Who put that thing on your
really?
but boy, we sure love it. But probably for 1,000. Again, that's my numerical number. That's the number of the days. 1,000 for a million reasons. That's part of its charm is that it is unpredictable and like a Tetris game in a way. But it's so warm. You're talking about doing duos with guitar. It's so humanistic and evocative, and I just love it. And Taylor, maybe you and I can chat offline a little bit more. I'd love to know what you're
Sure, he
thinking.
would love that. He
Okay.
actually interviews people too. He comes up with great ideas. I must admit, I've stolen some of his ideas because
Oh,
he's just, and although I don't, I want to run my own interview here. I do love his input.
cool. Well, keep them
Great.
coming. Keep them coming,
Yeah, like
definitely.
for instance, here's a good one.
Okay.
When you're in a creative block or any sort of rut, what helps you get unstuck? It's a great question.
Coffee.
Oh.
Well, again, what I don't do because not everybody is good at everything. I'm not really very good at writing tunes or composing. It's something I tell myself I'd like to do, but I just don't really write. Like I like to improvise and whatever, but so I don't experience. I guess I'm completely creatively blocked because I'm not writing anything.
I
So
wouldn't put it like that
no,
exactly.
I'm just making fun of it.
I know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think whatever it is that I do, which can't be labeled probably, I just kind of like I love to wake up every day and do more. So I'm just in this kind of fantastic role for a couple of years of like, oh, I can't wait to play guitar. I can't wait to, whatever. And then when I'm doing my non-guitar things, it's like, yeah, I'm happy to do it. And oh, cool, I can raise some money or I can make someone happy. Or, I mean, to me, that's a win. If I really can just make life better for someone else at any given day, it's great. So I don't know. But again, maybe another offline conversation is going to stack up. Like, what do you do about that? Nothing. Drink coffee for the
Okay.
best.
Well, I have a few suggestions from my friend Dan DeVilla.
Okay.
Let's see. One is here's your guest with six guitarists and an evening for Benedetto Guitars, and then another one is solo acoustic piece, which kind of comes from what you're talking about, doing Andrew York songs,
Oh my gosh.
1990.
Both of those are really old. Oh, I don't know about either of
You might
those.
want to do some of the ones that she sent me. So let
Yeah,
me.
I mean, I appreciate that. The Benedetto thing, that was very cool. I got to play with some great guitar players in Pittsburgh at a couple concerts. And in musicians' terms, they just kicked my ass so hard that it was great because it launched me into really shedding. Because it was like, okay, wake up. And I'm glad I said yes to that. And I'm honored that Benedetto asked me to do this Benedetto Players thing. But boy, oh boy, it's probably hard for me to watch it now because it's really so far in the rearview mirror. The Andrew York thing, that's from my master's recital at
Oh,
U. And so
that's
it's
a way back.
really way back. I mean, again, almost my childhood.
Maybe we'll pick Olio because you said that's been getting a lot of hits.
You can, I think. Yeah, I don't know if that got played yet, but sure. Yeah, people like that one. I found I've kind of been doing this thing, you guys, where it's not intentional, but I just like I'm closing my eyes a lot when I play, and I realized when I recorded that, it's like my eyes were shut like pretty much the whole time, and that surprised me because it was not intentional, but that I kind of felt like that said something. I'm not sure what language it's speaking, but
Did we open with that song?
You might have, but I don't know if people heard it or whatever. And you're welcome to do it again or
I think we
whatever.
opened with a different song.
Oh,
That's
did
my
you?
feeling. Or maybe. I don't know. Let's. Bass solo. Okay.
Scat, little vocal
That
solo.
was fun. That was great. I don't think we heard that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but doing it with the eyes closed. It's like been this interesting realization as time's gone by that I don't need to see it, which confounds some of my friends. They're like, "Wait a minute, you're not looking at what you're doing." It's like, yeah,
Well, to me, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking it just really, to me, means that you're really married to um, married to the guitar in a way that is, you've joined with the guitar, and so you don't need to particularly look at it. I mean, you opened your eyes once when you were just kind of like, oh, I feel like the desire to play the upper chord, register was there, and so you just took a minute to open your eyes just to see, okay, I'm going higher, and which was a beautiful choice, by the way. And yeah, so that's what I was thinking when I was watching you. I didn't suffer because your eyes weren't open. Good to know,
neither
right?
did I. I probably opened them because I was looking for a text message that came in. I did that, but no, that's just an offshoot of something that surprised me.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like liking. I'm on a trajectory where I'm playing in new ways for me, and I really miss playing. Like I used to do a lot of R&B gigs. I miss playing groove stuff. I miss playing
Yeah.
with a lot of people. I miss just I just like playing in a band, and because of COVID, I just dialed stuff back. I turned work away. I was invited to play a festival on the other side of the country that was fairly recent, and I just kept like sort of because of COVID saying no, no, no. It'll come back for me, and I look forward to that. But I like the idea of emerging, me and my guitar friends that I've bonded with or merged with, and being a little different, being a different player and a different level in a way. That's kind of fantastic. That's this incredible, rare opportunity I got to slightly reinvent. So it's precious, and I'm just grateful. It's a privilege to play the guitar. It really is.
Yeah.
That's just the way I see it. And yeah, I guess I don't need to look, so that's cool. Yeah, it's in there. I don't know what I would do if I couldn't. I would probably go a little nutty. I hope that never
I
happens.
know. Well, I've thought of that too, actually. Like Dave Mackay was a real dear friend of mine. He had been blind since high school, which was to me even worse than starting off blind. And he had been a painter. Jeez.
Ooh, wow.
And so, anyway, but his playing was kind of like painting. It had this feeling of, strokes and colors being formed, and he was very independent from the right and the left hand. And also, one night, he I heard him use the blender in the bar as part of the music, and that it was intriguing to me too. It's like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Instead of resisting, or shutting down, you just embrace the whole thing. It was really beautiful.
Super in the moment, like you
Yeah.
were talking about. And I was lucky I got to study a little bit, and I mean a little slice, with John Cage when I was a college student. So that was a great lesson because I got to perform 12 radios, which is you sit on a stage and you dial in. And he was right there, like watching us, sort of supervising it. And 4 minutes and 33 seconds, I got to see that performed, where the pianist closes the piano and just sits until 4 minutes and 33 seconds goes by. But it was, it's a cliche to say it was a very Zen experience, but it really was because everyone in the room became attuned to every other person in the room, every other sound in the room. It became this living organism because we were all that there was. And how this whole life form was there around the fact that someone just set the table. Just like set the table and notice it. So, yeah, I mean, we're really missing a lot of what's going on for sure. And I'm here with my headphones, practicing, and I'm in my little tunnel vision. But really, I'm not fooling myself when I know it's very static. I miss the interactivity, with the environment, and sometimes I hate the interactivity with the environment too. Like, oh, the amp sounds bad, or it's too hot, or whatever. But that's part of the fun of it for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I've been really trying to notice the moments of now all around me. And uh, it was interesting. Yesterday, I had a pretty good day, and then the latter part of the day, there was too much cacophony that I was not happy about. And I could feel my own stress levels higher, which is not a real normal thing for me. So, and, I just went outside when I got this moment to just sit down outside and not think and just kind of meditate basically, but with my eyes open, just not think. It was such a relief. Oh my God.
What a relief. I mean, to not think for 5 seconds. And all these factors make a huge difference, not to mention just allowing yourself to reset. And sometimes you don't notice how it's stripping kind of like everything out of you. You can go about your day and then you're depleted and you didn't even really feel it happening. But it's so many small things. And what came to my mind was, our beloved Joe Diorio. And I remember he used to just talk about, like, you have to wear the right shoes when you play. Otherwise you can't play right. And, he's right. It's like all these things. Don't wear the wrong shoes. Could mess you up. He's right.
I remember when I was at Berkeley, I was not a vocalist at Berkeley. I mean, I had always been a vocalist, but I played flute. But I was very young, I was under 21. And there was this one night that a storefront was rented out, and there was about 25 or 30 chairs, and two chairs, and Pat Metheny and Mick Goodrick. And it was kind of dark inside. I don't know who had a light. Maybe it was a battery light. I don't know. Anyway, that was like, it was perfect. It didn't have to be a big room. It didn't have to have big lights. It didn't have to have a lot of people. It was this moment that was perfect because of everything that was going on, everything that was included in that moment.
I mean, here it is all these years later, and you can almost still feel it.
Yeah, Absolutely.
That speaks volumes to like the power of, without, again, delving into platitudes. All of these moments are just, we're again going back to Joe Diorio. We're just scratching the surface. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
we're barely getting it, but there are times when it happens, whether it's kismet, place, time, and place, or in our performances, our playing, or what we're creating. And boy, that stuff just stays with you.
The rest of your life.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like
That
some
would
of,
be a nice book actually to ask everybody, or maybe I should make the questions, like the famous last question of the interview, I ask everybody. But it would be really great to know a few of the moments that you never forgot. What good or bad, or somebody moved you, you never forgot it, you always bring it up, or you don't, or whatever. Um, do you have any moments like that you can share?
probably, yeah. I think because it's tied into music, and we've been talking about Joe, and I've shared this story before, but I think there was my lessons with him when I was teaching at GIT, and he was too, and I'd stay after school. And forgive me if you've heard this story before, folks. But he would bring, we'd just hang out. We were tired. It was the end of a long day, and I'd stick around, and he'd stick around, and we'd play. And it was this overwhelmingly, inspiring for me. And then one day he said, let's play. Bring your favorite art book was what it was, and so. Or maybe he brought his favorite, but it was a Picasso book, and he just said, "Open the books. Okay, we're going to play this." And we played it, and I just never forgot what that felt like. And it kind of dovetails into all this that we're talking about, of being in the moment, of the unexpected, of allowing it, of going towards it. And as much as 5 minutes before we were like playing a million notes and trying to do our jazz, whatever, it was just sort of like, let's take the lid off this thing. Let's take the lid off. And I've had a lot of those let's take the lid off things with different people in different times and places, because I love Joe, because he was like my musical father. That one's really strong for me. That's a powerful one. And so, I think probably many of us have had those moments when we've been performing or playing with other people where it's just like chink, 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 feels perfect, feels right. It's like, that thing. And it doesn't stay forever, but I think we have those, and so it's hard to articulate. Oh yeah, that time I played with so and so, but they're very personal, and it's like a little like falling in love. Sometimes it's sort of like you can't really do justice to describe it. But I think that's a good question to put in your rotation. Like, and I mean, there's other things where it's been sort of the opposite, where it's been like, oh my god, that was the most terrifying thing, and I'll never forget that too. Like with Wayne Shorter, like 3 feet in front of me, or playing Pat Martino's guitar and he's standing right there. It's like, yeah, I want to try it out here. He says, play my guitar. I'm like, oh God, wait a minute. I'm playing his guitar. And that's half the time the stuff that's like that. I just laugh now. I mean, I have the perspectives, like all these things are hilarious. Like so many of my pratfalls or pitfalls, Joe Pass yelling at me for looking like Pat Metheny, like you look like Pat Metheny, or why'd you play that B flat note or whatever. And it was like, but now it's hysterical, so it was great. What about you? What about you? Tell me,
Well,
tell me one of yours besides that beautiful moment in the, do you have another one?
yeah, well, gosh, I think some of the moments that I remember are being acknowledged by, heroes, whether or not they were heroes for a long time. Like, I remember I worked at Dante's as a waitress for a year and a half when I was young, and that was a really good period of time. And I met a lot of musicians during that time. And like I meeting Jake Hanna, and Frank Severino, and Conti Condoli. Those guys were kind of hard to describe what they represented to me, but they were solid. They were they were kind. They were, none of them were hitting on me, It wasn't that kind of a thing. They were, it was family, community. They recognized me and they recognized me, and there was this communication and friendship and those things. I think I had a lot of those kind of things along my life that really impinged on me and made me kind of who I am. The guy I talked to yesterday, Teddy Adams, he seemed very much like he was a part of that school. I even asked him, I said, you seem very um, substantial, and you're not, I mean, I think he said he was 82, but still 82 and carrying all that. He actually said he grew up around a lot of older musicians, and he thought that he gained something by that.
That's a wonderful framework. I mean, and a rare framework. And being seen, like you talk about with these guys, those kind of solid cats of LA, the legit guys, being
Yeah,
acknowledged, not being hit on, being taken
yeah,
seriously. It's a big deal. When you haven't had that, you haven't been taken in to the fold,
yeah.
and you're on the outside looking in, and you get to kind of cross into being in the club, kind of. But that's an interesting thing about Teddy, because clearly we can say, oh, well, the OGs, it's not like it was, and, all these legends have passed on, and but they have before, like Duke Ellington died, and we're still learning his music, and we're still sharing it, and it's still, inspiring. And so, again, as we're sort of the middle men, forgive the gender term or whatever, but we're the carriers, we're messengers, and so we have to just keep on sharing that. Goes back to the jazz is dead and all that. But I think, volumes have been written on that topic about like how the clubs, if we look at LA, it's not the same. There aren't that many places to play. The internet stepped in. Yeah, it's changed,
Yeah,
but it's always going to change. It's
yeah.
always going to change.
Uh-huh.
Let's not bemoan whatever it is that masquerades as progress, because sometimes it really is progress and sometimes it seems like going backwards. But I think human history's always had that. I mean, sometimes we see these historical events and things happening. It's like, didn't we learn anything from that? Are we going through this again? We're doing it again. Apparently we are. So anyway, I'm rambling a bit here, and I think
It's karma.
it
It
is
is.
karma.
It
It
is
is it
karma.
is karma, and it's like people like yourself or other people who are committed to sharing these stories, to passing it on, the flame. It's super important, because if not us, then who? And you having Teddy on, and I caught a little bit of it yesterday, and it's nice to see there was a tribute video, made
Yeah,
to, like recognizing, yeah, it ain't gonna be this way again. It's
right.
not. It's just not. It'll be something different,
Yeah,
and that's all right. But yeah, I know it. You know it when you see it. When you're around someone who's played jazz for like 70 years, and it's like, oh my God, wow, it's an
it's so
incredible.
elegant, isn't it? It's really great.
Yeah, that's like, isn't it? It's sort of the culmination of a jazz life is elegance. If you stay with it,
Hmm.
all the bruises and everything, but the language and the evolution you get from it, that's a really great image that of elegance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you know JB Dias?
do not, no.
He's the vice president of performance for the Thelonious Monk Institute.
Oh, okay.
And I
Are
had a
they?
really interesting conversation with him. Yeah, it's here.
Where are they? It's there. Are they USC now, or they moved?
Um,
They changed their name.
maybe at USC. Yeah, did they change the name Herbie Hancock or I can't remember, but you should look up on the archives. I think you would be really interested in his conversation and meeting him. But
Cool.
yeah, I met him actually through Larry Koontz, but really good to talk to and find out what they're doing. They're really doing so much along these lines. For instance, they have this uh, this ongoing event series where they take their prize students from college with one ringer guy, or girl, and they travel around the country and they go to schools, like high schools, and the ringer might talk a little, but then it's actually one on one. So like the college students will hang out with the high school kids and they'll play, they'll talk. I mean, that wow. It's like
Yeah.
a blend of everything, right? And it's just so they found that that works really great. The high school kids want somebody closer to their age, and who they can really talk to about what's happening, the wins, the losses.
That's kind of brilliant. I mean, really, because it's not much of a leap to go between those ages, but enough so that there's enough, wisdom when you're in college that you can dispense and share and be kind of comrades. That's really, really, really smart. I wish if I had been in high school, somebody from a college like connected to me, that would have changed my life radically. Like
Yeah.
unbelievable. So yeah, I would love to know more about that. That's really smart. And there's I in my you were asking what my job is or whatever, one of those things I mentioned
Yeah.
was the Grammy Museum for about
Oh
13
yeah.
years. We've been doing this class series for high school kids, LAUSD,
Yeah.
bringing primarily MI teachers, but not always, for free classes for these high school kids. Some of them, they come from different parts of the city. I've had experiences where some of them have said, like, you know what, I never even crossed the bridge to get to the other side of downtown my whole life until we came to this Grammy Museum and took this class and took the tour of the museum. I never even knew this anything like this. I never even traveled 3 miles. It just was mind blowing. So it's more opportunities. Let's cook up more opportunities and do whatever kind of outreach we can. It's not the same as a college to high school connection, but boy, people, especially with cuts in the arts and all that, just starved for it.
Yeah.
Kids just need to have it
Yeah.
brought to them and easy to get to. But that's very cool. I've never heard of anything quite like
Yeah.
that.
And actually, I spoke with Sam Hirsch, the really good pianist who he runs Sunday night music at the Mint. I don't know if you've ever been over
I
there, but
used to live around the corner from there, yeah.
oh, okay. So he does his own group, and then earlier he'll have another group opening. But anyway, one thing I was really impressed with, I love his playing, and he's a real sweetheart. But for years, he has donated his time to a school in like a lesser financial area, and for troubled kids, troubled youth. He's donated I mean, like consistently every week. He's giving his time, and it's amazing. He's done it for years. It's like really beautiful, and he's donated his time. It's just great, really beautiful thing.
There's a lot of kind of like angels, out there. I mean, if we just look at our own city and our own community, they're out there doing this. And I didn't know about him, and I wouldn't begin to ever want to propose a topic for you, Kathy. But if you ever wanted to do like, a 5-minute highlight of, a bunch of people that are doing these kinds of things, it would be pretty inspiring. Because it's inspiring for me just to hear for you recounting these stories. And it's just down the road or on the other side of town that people are doing this. And I know of lots more, and I have friends that do great things like this too. And it's just anecdotal, like, oh yeah, I know she does that and he's doing that. But boy, it would be really beautiful.
I like that. I'm gonna think about that. I love that idea.
You know a lot of these people. You know at least 423 because I'm number and more.
Now I just
Maybe
have to
more.
review the 2 hours with everybody. But actually, that was going to be my next little book. I wrote a book this year, or I finished a book after 15 years. But the next one I wanted to start on was, actually looking at each one of these hangs and writing down the aha moments that I personally had. and then creating a book, or maybe more than that, a book of that. And but just the thought of, starting to listen to the 2 hour sessions. So this is my book that I came out with.
Oh, cool.
And this is a philosophy book about how the same lessons apply to different areas of your life. So for me, it's singing, jazz, and technique and life, because I know those areas pretty well. So the same little lesson, like for instance, the idea of communication solving everything, right, in life, like in jazz, if you're coming from that idea and moving forward on communicating, it makes the music better. And also technique, actually. If I'm stuck in technique, I find that if I actually add in this communication, my technique all of a sudden goes click. So it's, that's just an example. But, and, it's kind of a little, outreach to people saying, you have areas in your life that you're good at, and look for those moments, look for those lessons in each area. I don't know, it's makes my life worth living, actually, that aspect.
That's great. Well, you keep expressing it in different ways, different mediums, singing, writing books, doing this. Who knows what you do when you're not on camera, but but probably more of the same. but no, it's true. It's sort of a guiding principle. If it's I'm here to communicate, I'm saying something, and communication isn't one directional. Obviously, it's also finding the receptivity on the other side, which we can't really control, but we can sort of influence. It's super deep, and boy, yeah, all of this is a really worthwhile pursuit for sure. But I didn't know that you wrote books, and it makes a lot of sense to me, because I think you live long enough, you realize that you stop being afraid, and you're finding all kinds of ways to have communication, and hopefully a message gets through to people. Because boy, the other stuff, you let it get in the way, it's just, what's the point? You're too scared to sing or play or to try or whatever it is. We all have these challenges. We all are afraid. It's being human, I don't want to suck. I'm only, this kind of person. I'm not the right gender or color, or I come from the wrong part of town, or whatever all these things are. It's like at some point it's just so exhausting, and it's not what you're doing it for. And really, if you're not, you make yourself miserable. How many people are really miserable? Like a lot. And yet they're doing something they sort of purport to love, yet they torture themselves, And granted, it's hard work. Like I work so hard, and I can work a lot harder. I see other people that work a lot harder at playing music, but I'm not going to beat myself up. That's not even a choice. And so a lot of people get stuck in, they can't get past that thing. Yeah. Making themselves unhappy. Anyway, but that's cool. So I have now 3 books to read, 2 people to meet because of this. I'm going to be really busy, and
It's hard to listen to music and all this too, because there's so much going on. You got to practice. In the car, I practice a lot, and sometimes I'm like, I really should call blah blah blah, but I really want to practice. So I'm going to practice. But it's really, time is like, I finally had to I was taking piano lessons this semester from Jeremy Siskind in Fullerton, online. And I was doing well up until a certain point, and I was preparing for a project, a recording project. And I just couldn't put the time in on piano, because you got to practice, and so I had to withdraw, and but that's okay. I learned some stuff. It changed my listening and observation, and it also showed me that I can do it, and I just have to. Of course, I know I have to just keep practicing the same thing over and over, and at some point the penny drops, and so it gave me some good stuff, actually, in a matter of a few months, so I'll probably take the class again, but it'll have to be at a time when maybe well, I don't know. Maybe
Which is never. You're not going to have free time.
I know. Maybe I'll just do it again and then see how far I get again. Maybe I'll get really good at the beginning few months. Every time, I'll withdraw, then I'll start again.
It's sort of liberating if you don't have to feel like you have to become really good. It's
Yeah.
super liberating. It's like, it's okay. I just am doing it because I learned something and I love it. I enjoy it. So I mean, that's perfectly legit, if not even more. So no recital for you. Don't worry.
Thanks, Beth. Let's see if there's one other question that. Roland was commenting on the Jimmy Weibel thing, and he said the second one is double tracked, right? Not sure what he meant by that.
I don't know what that means.
What do you mean by that, Roland? Maybe we were talking and that was something.
Did we mess up and talk over it or something?
I don't know.
No.
So, I loved the day before yesterday when I was talking to Anna, I loved how she said what her point of view is. She's very deep, but she talked so gently and everything that you was like, what did she just say? That was, wow, really cool. But I loved how she talked about mistakes or looking at herself. Like I played some things that was early in her playing with Otmara Ruiz. So, and I was asking her about what made her choose playing very stably as opposed to, a little more loose and creatively. And she said, well, that was when she was basically too afraid to do anything else. She really wanted to concentrate. And to her, that was like, well, yeah, that was the young Anna, and the simple Anna, the safe Anna. But she had such a good point of view of that, looking at herself and listening to herself, which is something, I constantly try and get students to acquiesce their disgust of themselves, but so she just, it was like, yeah, it's great. It's just it's a moment of growth, and it's a light on what I need to work on, and yeah, she kind of appreciated the moment. It was really a very nice hit of that
You
point.
don't just arrive there. Nobody does.
No.
I mean, you got to go through some stuff, and if you can see it for what it is, so much the better, because it's just the way it's the way it works. I mean, and the fact that, especially if you're playing with someone who you really respect, you don't want to take crazy chances before you've earned the respect back. You got to, show up and do the expected work, and then sort of sneak in more of who you are and how you interpret, unless you're in a situation where somebody hires you and they just like, you do you. And that's, certainly the other thing too, and that's great. But yeah, she seemed very cool, and I guess we're adding now a fourth person I need to meet, which is so good, because there are so many great people, and I really, and I hope I play a gig with you someday, because
Me too.
great, and it would be criminal not to.
Yeah, I'd really love to. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. That would be just great. I'd love it. Of course, you have to be willing to come out.
Yeah, I would get in my car. LA, ew. Drive somewhere, no. But yeah,
Maybe we can do something on your side of town, or in
see
between
how,
Glendale and,
yeah, that's
there
like,
are places.
there are, yeah. See, I like where this is going. Yeah, for sure. Any other fan mail from your folks? Anything else I can confuse them about?
Yeah, let's see. Well, again, I think Taylor probably dropped
I
off
don't blame him. I do not blame him.
well, he probably had a class, but he did say, is there any record you've worked on that you're most proud of, and anyone that you wish could have been better?
Oh, all of it.
That's a real Taylor question.
Oh my gosh. I think that it's, not, we were talking about like, don't get down on yourself or whatever. I don't feel particularly proud of anything yet. How's that for a terrible answer? But I'm laughing.
I think Taylor could have heard that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not an absolutist in a certain sort of way, like it's the best or, not. But yeah, I'm human. So there are things I wish I could take back or do again. I don't know what I'm particularly proud of. I think really, as far as recording or playing guitar, I think what overrides it is what I'm most proud of in terms of the music world, and it sort of exists on a bio of mine somewhere, is teaching people. Is running GIT. That I'm like, that was, there's been like 5 people in the history of the world that ran GIT. The first one was Howard Roberts. I mean, there's this insane lineage, and so I got handed the baby, you know, like this thing that's a treasure, and take care of it. And I feel super. I'll just say it because I don't expect people to say we're proud of you, but I feel proud of it because I think I really did it right, and I did it with honor and dignity and respect, and grew it and quadrupled the size of it during the time I ran it, and built it into something that felt really special to me. And that means the world to me. And I'm not saying like I'm done or whatever. And but that, I'd say, as far as when I think of what I've been proud of in life, that more than any gig I've done or recording or solo or anything, I promise you, like that's the thing that really, and that took some growing up, because I really was hardwired, like I'm going to be a killer session player. When I get out of school, I'm going to be this, and to allow something else to percolate and do it, that was growing up. I grew up learning how to do that and being doubted, for sure. There were people around me that's like, wait, you're going to do this? You're the only woman that's ever run GIT. You're the this, the da, da. It's like, la la la, I don't want to hear it, and I don't need to hear it, and it's like I don't care. So anyway, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of, I'll say I'm proud of what I'm doing right now. I'm really proud of how hard I'm working on my playing. I don't know where it's going to end up. Someone offered me to do some recording actually yesterday or whatever. I might very well take them up on it and do something, and like I'll be really proud of that, I hope, till the next time. So I'm looking forward to that. I might be doing a little playing. I'd like to. There's a thing in Colorado. Maybe I'll be involved with that, do a little playing. But, I kind of cleared the deck of gigs this year, so slowly starting to kind of tumble out very slowly. And I'll be very proud of whatever comes next. And that's legit. It's the John Cage school of like, there's nothing there, nothing to see. Just be here. But good question, Taylor, and I'll enjoy talking to you, someday. Sure.
Well, on a completely other note, this last week, on one end of the week, and then on the other end of the week, I saw Bill Frizzell and I saw Schofield.
And what do you have to say?
I was, I'm, it lifted me up to heaven both times.
I believe that.
It was great. And I didn't find out about Schofield until like 2 days before, and my friend found out about Bill Frizzell, and I just was like, well, they're like 2 of my favorite guitar players, so I feel like I must be doing something right for my reality to to have the ability to see live, 2 of my favorite guitar players.
Yeah. No, those are all, when we were talking about moments,
Yeah,
so many,
yeah,
a lot of it is like, we get to be on the receiver end of it, like people we've seen live, and when I got to run GIT, I got to bring in my heroes, one after another, like every week. It's like,
yeah,
let's bring Brelly Legren, let's bring Tommy Emmanuel in, let's bring in, Schofield, let's bring Charlie Hunter. I mean, over and over, Jim Hall, let's bring them in. I got to do that. And I was like, of course I'm proud of that job. I had so much fun. I had a blast. It was like, this is the best thing in the world. And a lot of hard work. But yeah, it's like those things lifting us up, we take it for granted, because during when it really was sort of shut down, we couldn't have that. And how powerful this thing is when you taste that food again. Wow. Yeah, it's a big thing. So I'm happy you got to see those guys. They're great. I love them too, and I hope I can, in some very minuscule way, be that for someone else. If someone hears me and they're just like, oh, That really moved me. Like that would make me the proudest.
Yeah.
Just even that one thing. That Cathy Segal-Garcia person in the audience, who hears me. There she is, or there he is.
Look, I see the light in her eyes.
Her head's exploding.
Oh, Taylor is kind of in and out, but what's one huge piece of advice someone gave you in your development?
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Probably Diorio, right? I'm guessing.
Well, gee. Yeah, I mean, he really was my first important mentor, for sure. I don't know. I get a lot of them, and I've had a lot of teachers. I mean, I got to study with a lot of great, great, great players and teachers. A piece of advice, probably just continuity. Just don't stop. It's so simple, and anyone could say that to you, but it's really like just allow yourself to keep going. Never give up. And it's just the simplest thing. And I've probably heard it 100 different ways.
You know what? That's right out of the philosophy from my book. Continuity is one of those ideas that you can take to different parts of your life and apply it, and it's super important.
It's definitely is. It really, really is. And I think just being willing. It's a cliche, but be willing to do the work, whatever that work is, and you may not know going in what is you signed up for,
Yeah.
but it'll make itself known, and every day. So for me, it's like a drop of a pebble every day. I feel always like I'm making progress, even if it's minuscule. It never feels like it's going back, and that's fantastic to me. So maybe that's my own advice to myself. I don't have to convince myself, so much. It's just like, of course, I love that feeling. Just a tiny bit, because I know I don't have unrealistic expectations like I did when I was younger. It's like, damn it, why can't I get that? I can't get that. Why am I sucking? Or how come I can't do this? And it's like, that just is not, that's not on the table for me at all anymore. I don't need to have that discussion with myself. You're doing it or you're not doing it. So it's really simple and simplifying. That's really worked well for me. So I wish I could distill it into like one nice little thing that we could make a meme out of. I'll work on that, and I'll put it on my Facebook page if I think of it or I remember the best advice. But it's good to ask. I think asking, we're talking about the OGs and those stable, legit players, and like the Teddy Adams and the other people, we've all met. We have to be that for other people.
Yeah.
For sure. So I got to take that job a little more seriously, I suppose.
I think you've taken it seriously enough.
Serious as a heart attack? I don't know. No, I mean.
On that note, I'm going to end off our hang.
She's like, cut. She's like, really?
That's kind of the crowning point,
Just have a sense of, my advice is have a freaking sense of humor, have fun, enjoy your life. It's going to be over before you know it. Don't worry. You're lucky you play a guitar, you ungrateful little, no.
Whoa.
I'm just teasing.
Well, that's like what Bette Midler said, fuck them if they can't take a joke. So
kind of, but come on, we're so lucky, and I'm lucky, again to be here. I'm just really appreciative of you giving yourself and your time. And
well, thanks for being on, Beth. This was really fun, and I'll send you a few things, and send me your address so I can send you the Never Forgotten. And I've written down ideas. Thanks for the ideas. and I might be calling you. Who knows? Hey, Beth, remember that thing about the 5-minute segment thing?
You know where I live, for sure. Happy to help. And that's true. Like anybody that's like, stuck this out, or you're listening to the replay, find me. If you want to chat about stuff, what's mine is yours, and I'm very sincere about that. None of this belongs to me, except maybe that guitar. The rest of it, I swear, it's yours, and I take that seriously. So, thank you so much, Cathy. Your delight. Thank you.
That was really fun. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everyone.